Our story begins with a young man named Kim Jeongeum recounting a tale of woe, a series of events that led him to his current predicament. He begins by stating that a man named Kim Sol had forced him into boxing, leading to a period of hellish training. Jeongeum reflects on why he didn't simply quit, acknowledging that saying no wasn't an option. Instead, he chose the path of a slightly better hell. Later, Kim Sol revealed the true reason, that he simply needed a sparring partner because there wasn't anyone in the junior division. Jeongeum finds this ridiculous. Jeongeum then shifts to his current situation at a logistics center, commenting that he finds himself talking to a robot. He observes the lack of warmth and the scarcity of people at the center and realizes that he must have come to the wrong place. He reflects back to his military discharge about 2 months prior. The joy was short-lived. His family moved to a bigger house in Wajongbu, leaving him behind in a studio apartment near the school. His parents, as a gift for his discharge, paid for the deposit and half a year's rent, initiating his forced solitary living. With this newfound freedom, Jeongeum began his job hunt. He had some savings from the military and the government scholarship for multi-child families, so he wasn't in a rush. He had a vision of a pick-colored romance, starting at a cafe, but reality was not as kind. He was rejected for a cafe job because he had no experience, the reality proving to be harsher and colder than he expected. After a month of job hunting, his boredom was extreme. He was bored and considered himself useless. He contacts his sisters and expresses his feelings. They both tell him he was an idiot for moving into a studio apartment so early, and further stated he should have stayed home. They suggest he come to their gym and point out that it was easy to get a job as a delivery driver. They inform him that even delivery companies use AI to make the work easier. They tell him about PX Fulfillment Center, and that many people his age are working there. Jeongeum finds himself at the PX Fulfillment Center. He reflects on the lack of warmth, and the fact his conversation partner is a robot. He never imagined that finding a job would be this easy. He encounters Manager Shin, who is having an issue with the inventory. Manager Shin tells him that PX is indicating there is still tuna in stock, despite the fact that they are out, and asks that he check the warehouse. Jeongeum agrees and begins to search for the tuna. He comments that he feels like the robot PX feels warmer than Manager Shin. Jeongeum locates the tuna on the first floor. He is surprised that it wasn't where it was supposed to be and comments on the issue as he opens the door. However, as he enters, the door slams shut and locks behind him. Jeongeum realizes that he's trapped, and he attempts to call Manager Shin, but is sent to voicemail. He considers calling for help, but decides against it, since it doesn't seem too serious, and doing so would make things awkward with his manager. Jeongeum, still trapped in the warehouse, decided to wait, hoping the door would open soon. He messages his sister, informing her of his predicament. She finds it humorous, jokingly saying he's working for an escape room. Suddenly, a building collapses nearby. Jeongeum's sister calls him, trying to communicate that something is wrong, but the connection is lost. He hears a voice warning of danger, telling everyone to evacuate immediately and take shelter. He realizes something catastrophic is happening outside, feeling scared. He attempts to get someone's attention, yelling for help. He hits the door and screams that there are people inside. He tries to call 119, but the signal is weak. Jeongeum reflects on the dire situation and realizes that if a war is truly happening, then he might be in serious danger. As he is hitting the door, something appears nearby. Jeongeum instantly understands that he needs to remain quiet to survive. A strange entity moves past the door of the warehouse. Jeongeum understands that whatever was outside the door was definitely not human. The entity passes by the door, and he is left there alone. He realizes that he needs to figure out what to do, and he feels panic start to set in. He sits against the wall, attempting to process the situation, and he hears the sounds of destruction still occurring outside. Time passes, and Jeongeum has been trapped in the warehouse for 3 days. He concludes that since no one has come to look for him, something significant must have occurred outside. He begins to write his thoughts, realizing he doesn't have much battery left and that this will be his last note. The alarms have been quiet since yesterday, which is at least allowing him to get some sleep. Suddenly, a pop-up notification appears in front of him, informing him that he awakened an ability, his own subspace, and that he can store any object in front of him. He thinks he lost his mind, but decides to play along anyway and asks the system to store the entire PX fulfillment center. The system confirms his choice, asking if he would like to store the building. After he confirms, the surrounding area shifts into a desolate and destroyed landscape. Jeongeum looks out at the new view in shock. As Jeongeum surveys the destroyed landscape, a notification appears, indicating that storing has started. The system also informs him that an operating system suitable for his system has been found. His head suddenly feels strange as the update progresses. He remembers the loud roar he heard 3 days ago and wonders if it's a gorilla or a bear. Fortunately, it seems to be passing through. Suddenly, he is confronted by a large, monstrous figure, an orc, that is running towards him, screaming. He feels terrified. The orc is coming closer quickly. Another notification appears, stating that synchronization is complete and he can now enter the subspace. The system asks if he would like to enter. Jeongeum, in a panic, agrees. Jeongeum finds himself within the subspace. He notices that the orc is outside, attempting to get in but unable to cross the boundary. He realizes that whatever happened, he is safe. The system clarifies that without permission from Kim Jeongeum, the master of the subspace, no living thing, object, or energy can enter or leave. He acknowledges the system, expressing surprise that it can speak. Jeongeum is shown inside the subspace, and he is in disbelief at what he is seeing. Jeongeum asks if the orcs really can enter. The system confirms, as he gets a notification stating he has completed his first tutorial and receives a mana stone as a reward. He notes the information that he has received and sees the facility info. It tells him the building is 5 stories and approximately 33,000 square meters. The system shows that it has a shipping speed of 60 kilometers per hour, a limit of 1 simultaneous shipment, and a shipping size limit of 2 meters. Jeongeum is given a warning that maintenance is 2 minutes away, and the system explains that he needs to use the mana stone to power the facility. He is informed that the single mana stone he has can power the facility for 24 hours. He asks how this is possible. The system explains that when storing the facility, the energy system was modified to work with mana stones. Jeongeum is doubtful that 1 small stone can power the entire facility. He notes the system seems to have gotten a bit smarter. The system alerts him that the energy supply has been cut off, which would impact Pax Fresh, a delivery system that stores and delivers fresh and frozen foods. Jeongeum realizes that in the current situation, food is the most crucial element for survival. He knows that the power to the freezers and refrigerators storing the food has been cut off. He asks the system if it can maintain the entire facility for 24 hours with 1 mana stone. It confirms. He asks how to obtain more mana stones. The system tells him they can be obtained from beings of another world. Jeongeum contemplates the meaning of beings of another world. He uses the mana stone to maintain the facility. He asks if he can search for items like before, and the system confirms. He begins searching for weapons and locates a camping hand axe, a kitchen knife, and a folding steel knife. He reflects that these items would be hard to use in close quarters. He decides throwing them is his best option, but he is concerned that there's not much stock of these items left. He is also unsure if the blades would penetrate the orc's muscles. He decides that he doesn't have to kill it in one go, and inflicting a serious wound would be sufficient. He convinces himself to try and commits to the fight. He throws the weapons. The weapons make contact, but they don't seem to do significant damage. Jeongeum realizes the knives are too light, and the only thing that might be effective is the axe, but then wonders about throwing heavy objects, like a bowling ball, to target the joints. He asks PX how much of the axes are left in stock, and the system indicates that there are 15. He notes that there were 15 before, and he wonders why they are duplicating. The system explains that items in the subspace are created by converting real objects into information. Therefore, they can be duplicated, and while they can be damaged, they cannot be depleted. Jianjium, realizing that this means infinite stock, decides he can just throw freely. He reflects that he will get tired before killing the monster, and the system tells him that he doesn't have to throw them manually, and he can automatically ship products out of the subspace. It can only ship once every 30 seconds, but that shipping time can be reduced by enhancing the skill. He asks how to do it, and the system explains that if he just thinks of the registered product and says ship, it will be automatically shipped. He says ship, and a knife travels at an incredible speed out of the subspace. Jianjium is shocked at the shipping speed, which the system confirms is 60 kilometers per hour. It tells him it can be increased to 75 kilometers per hour, and any further increase would require enhancing the skill. He asks how to enhance the skill, and the system informs him that he can do so with mana stones. Jianjium realizes he needs to search for items and locates lightweight combat boots, tactical combat pants, a detailed map of Seoul, and 12 color markers. He locates his home on the map and also marks Dabong district with Gyeongbu, Gangnam, and Yeoljiro. He decides that if he goes to the nearest place first, then that would be his order. He acknowledges that he must get to everyone safely, noting it's quite far to walk, but he has a decent means of transportation. He locates and decides on a dual-ton Kodiak Sports electric bicycle. He then states to his loved ones to just hold on a little longer. The youngest is coming soon. The story continues with Jianjium outside the subspace. He has been outside for 30 minutes and has already killed 12 orcs. He reflects on his ability, noting two key things he has learned. First, the shipping ability is overpowered, even with a 30-second cooldown and a limited range. He also realizes that this ability can be upgraded with mana stones. He then thinks about the product retrieval ability, which automatically retrieves dispatched items. He realizes it is as convenient as the shipping ability. He discovers that while normal items like axes don't need to be retrieved, mana stones do. He also realizes that the mana stones are only available after the enemy is dead. He gets a notification stating he has obtained 1 mana stone and now has 13 total. He reflects that he is literally collecting money. He concludes that it's good that he put PX into the subspace. As long as it's maintained, he cannot die inside. Now he needs to get his family into the subspace. As he is moving, he reflects on the second thing he has learned. There are more creatures beyond common sense, not just orcs. He spots a winged creature, larger than an orc, and realizes it's going to be tough to hunt. He hears several cries in the distance. Suddenly, Jianjium hears a human scream. He rushes toward it and sees a man being attacked by the winged creature. He sees that it's Mr. Choi. Mr. Choi is being attacked, and the winged creature seems to be ignoring him. He realizes that the smaller Mr. Choi seems like an easier target. Jianjium knows he needs to do something to distract the creature. He begins to ship a variety of different objects towards the winged creature. Suddenly, the winged creature is killed by an axe that appears out of nowhere. The man is amazed that a wyvern was killed with a single axe throw. He looks over and sees a man on a bicycle. He is astonished that a soldier was able to do that. A survivor thanks Jianjium profusely and believes he is a soldier. He states that Jianjium saved their lives. Jianjium clarifies that he is not a soldier and is actually a PAX FC employee. He also adds that he is aware of abilities. The survivor exclaims that even if he isn't a soldier, he has unusual skills. The man expresses his envy that Jianjium has an ability, and he does not, though. He states his is just a humble driver ability. He also says they are fortunate to have found help around this area. He confirms that he understands abilities. He then thanks Jianjium again. The survivor asks if there are other people nearby. He explains that this area, Block C, had a lot of people due to the logistics center, but most have been killed. He states that there might be 10 to 15 survivors left, isolated in the Block E underground terminal, and that they were also there searching for a road vehicles could use before the building disappeared. He offers Jeonjim to join them on the 4th basement floor, where the monsters have never attacked, so he can at least sleep comfortably and have snacks. Jeonjim is considering it, as he heard them mention vehicles, and that might be a way to get to his family, deciding that he needs to get information and that he cannot refuse. He accepts the offer and they begin to lead the way. He also notes he doesn't trust them, but worst case scenario, he can just go into his subspace. He realizes they do not know about his ability. As the group walks together, Jeonjim notices a man with a face he has never seen and feels like something about him is dangerous. They are shocked at the sudden appearance of an orc. They confirm that no one was injured, but they acknowledge the space is no longer safe. Jeonjim expresses concern that he was told it was safe from monsters. They introduce Jeonjim as the one who saved them from the wyvern. They also discuss the unique ability he used to kill it. The group praises Jeonjim for saving Yongsu and Byeonkyol. A woman hugs Jeonjim, thanking him profusely, and jokingly asks if he has a girlfriend. The people then begin to introduce themselves. Lee Jin-mak, the center manager of Daehin Express Terminal, thanks Jeonjim for saving his men. He then invites him in, offering food and a safe place to rest, explaining that they have plenty of supplies from the logistics center. A man then informs Lee Jin-mak that the logistics center has disappeared without a trace. He explains that is why they were chased by the wyvern. The survivors are shocked and ask how that is even possible, as the building was huge. Lee Jin-mak states that they don't know how it happened, but things are different now. He then decides that they need to dig through the tunnel, as things will only get worse if they stay here. Another survivor agrees, and they all decide to force their way through. Lee Jin-mak then asks if Jeonjim is coming. Lee Jin-mak explains that they need vehicles, as they all have homes in other areas. They have working vehicles, but all the roads are blocked. He explains that a golf course blocks the north. Containers block the east, and the expressway is destroyed to the south. The tunnel to the west is the only way out, but a group of wyverns has taken over it. He explains they were surviving off the supplies in the logistics center, but now they have to force their way through the tunnel. Jeonjim realizes he was right to suspect the group. Jeonjim states that he needs a vehicle as well, and he needs to go through the tunnel, adding that if it is just wyverns, then that's good, as he can use his ability to get rid of them. While Lee Jin-mak is not convinced, he accepts, recognizing his power. However, Jeonjim thinks to himself that while they may seem kind, he shouldn't overlook that they have been struggling, and that they likely won't share information, like the exact amount of food and water they have. He decides that he needs to scout the tunnel and the size of the wyverns, so he can clear the way alone, and that he'll use this to upgrade his abilities and get mana stones. He discovers new upgradable skills within his subspace: precise delivery, simultaneous delivery, and automatic delivery. He realizes that with 5 magic stones, he can reduce his shipping cooldown to 5 seconds. He decides that he needs to use the magic stones he has saved, and that the simultaneous delivery ability will be best for taking on multiple wyverns. The survivor tells Jeonjim that it's dangerous to go alone, who then reminds a man that he was just being chased by a wyvern. The man states that he believes Jeonjim will save them again. Jeonjim expresses gratitude for their trust. He is surprised by this, as he never expected someone to say they trust him. He looks at them confused. Jeonjim asks if he can see the message windows, since he's never used his abilities before. The man states that he hasn't seen them since his abilities awakened, but he has a good feeling about how to drive, and says he'll try. The man begins to drive, and Jeonjim is immediately concerned by his driving. He's having difficulty seeing because of the damaged vehicles on the road. The group states that there is a wyvern ahead. They then see several wyverns ahead. The group expresses panic, wondering what they should do. The survivor tells Jeonjim that he can't see, and asks what to do. Jeonjim tells him to keep driving. The tunnel is closer than he thought, and the group sees it. Then the man suddenly stops, saying nothing with express fear. He is stopped because the wyverns have surrounded them. They realize that they are surrounded and that there is no way they can outrun or kill them, even with Jeonjim's ability. The driver says it's over for them. Jeonjim realizes he can't hide his ability anymore, stating that there's no way they can handle this many wyverns. He makes the decision to use 10 mana stones for simultaneous delivery, and the remaining 5 for cooldown. Pax confirms this. Jeongeum activates his ability, and the screen flashes white. The scene then skips to show the result, with Jeongeum unharmed and the wyvern seemingly dead. The driver is completely confused at what has just occurred. He saw multiple axes flying through the air, and begins to realize that they came from another dimension. The story continues with Jeongeum inside his subspace. He uses 1 mana stone to reduce the cooldown time to 25 seconds, another to 20 seconds, another to 15 seconds, and then another which brings it to its minimum of 5 seconds. The system explains that he would need to level up his subspace to further reduce it. He tells Yongsu that he needs to stay close for protection. Yongsu agrees, and then seems shocked to see the logistics center behind Jeongeum. The wyverns begin to attack once more. Jeongeum begins launching axes toward the wyverns. Yongsu expresses disbelief that the logistics center is launching axes. He states that he doesn't understand, but recognizes that for Jeongeum, these monsters aren't a problem. He adds that if Jeongeum wants to pass through the tunnel, then he can do it easily. He realizes he doesn't need to use the vehicles as transport because he has his abilities. He expresses his jealousy that Jeongeum has the ability to get to his family faster. The survivor who was previously riding with Jeongeum mentions that the wyverns are running away, and then says they are smarter than they look. Jeongeum thinks that he wanted to enhance his precision delivery, but he is short on mana stones. Yongsu asks Jeongeum what the blue stones are, and Jeongeum tells him they are mana stones. Yongsu asks if it's Jeongeum's first time using them, and if abilities can be enhanced. Jeongeum confirms. He states that's why he didn't extract the mana stones from the Orc's corpse, implying that not all abilities work the same way. He then expresses his disbelief that Jeongeum has such an incredible ability. He also says that with his abilities, he could probably break through the tunnel alone. Jeongeum thinks to himself that he didn't intend to show off his abilities, and that he just planned to scout, then secretly break through. Yongsu apologizes for getting in the way, and Jeongeum states that he would not have been able to get through alone. He states that they should head back, as the wyvern might attack again soon. Yongsu then asks where he plans to go, asking if he needs a vehicle to do so. Jeongeum tells him he plans to go to Gangnam, then to Ujeongbu. Yongsu is surprised and says he is heading to Indyokwan, and that it's on the way to Gangnam. He then asks Jeongeum if he could accompany him to Indyokwan. Jeongeum is caught off guard by this. Yongsu reflects that if he goes through the tunnel, he is not sure if he will get home safe. He is confident in his driving abilities, but can't fight off monsters. Jeongeum realizes that Yongsu can help with driving, and that, more importantly, this will give him an excuse to hide his abilities. He decides that he trusts Yongsu, and agrees to let Yongsu drive. Jeongeum says he will have Yongsu drive, but he will handle the tunnel on his own, as others will only get in the way. He doesn't want his ability revealed, and asks that they let him handle the tunnel. Yongsu agrees and promises that he will get everyone to cooperate. He then tells everyone that Jeongeum will break through the tunnel alone with his ability, and they need to wait outside until it's done. Jeongeum is aghast at Yongsu's actions, realizing that Yongsu has revealed his secret despite asking him not to. The group begins discussing how Jeongeum will handle the tunnel, and wonders what his ability is. A survivor comments that this is someone they should be wary of. Another survivor states that he is now saying things that will only make them trust him less, while yet another says that they have no choice but to go along with it. Lee Jin-mak tells Jeongeum that he will not ask about his ability, and that they will wait so that he can scout the tunnel for them. He expresses gratitude that Jeongeum has made this decision out of consideration for them. As Jeongeum begins to move, Lee Jin-mak tells Jeongeum that they have gathered reserve food supplies to give to him for his journey. He also apologizes that all they could offer is food, and that Jeongeum also has to clear the tunnel. Jeongeum is taken aback by this, and says he did it because he needed to, and that the food is too much. He believes it must have been saved for their families, and tries to give it back. Lee Jin-mak tells him to accept it, and says it must have been hard for everyone to share their food. adding that he thinks they have families too. Lee Jin-mak then says it's time to bring out the alcohol. He states that it's a shame there's so little, but it's for the best. He pours them all some and tells them they can have just enough to safely arrive with their families. He proposes a toast to a safe arrival and for Jeongeum. Jeongeum is moved. As he's having a moment with the group, the screen shifts, showing the area before him as an open and destroyed world. The group begins to express alarm at this new vision. Jeongeum then says that he will be back and steps through the tunnel. The scene shifts to a flashback showing Jeongeum with his sisters, bickering as usual. He remembers his father telling them how he, as an only child, envied their bond. He reflects on the fact that he always envied the bond between siblings, and that he knows that one day they will realize just how precious family truly is. The scene then moves to Lee Jin-mak drunkenly missing his son, and he is scolded by the other members. The scene changes to Jeongeum leaving, saying that he is going out for fresh air. He is seen in the dark, then Yongsu walks up to him. Yongsu asks why he isn't sleeping and what he's doing. Jeongeum claims he can't sleep. Then Yongsu loads up the remaining vehicles from the logistics center. He mentions that he loaded about half to avoid making the vehicle too heavy, but that it should be more than enough. He then states that he has filled all 15 vehicles. He asks Yongsu to keep this a secret. Yongsu thinks to himself about Jeongeum's generosity. Back into the tunnel, Jeongeum begins to think about using his abilities to put people into his subspace. He asks PX if it's possible to put other people in the subspace. Pac states that it isn't possible at the current level, but that at level 2 he would be able to accommodate up to 20 people. He needs 32 more mana stones to reach level 2. Jeongeum states that there are roughly 40 wyverns in the tunnel, with a few running away, and that leveling up here is unlikely. He also states that without the upgrade to precision delivery, he would not have been able to catch so many. He states that if he wants to eventually put his family into the subspace, he needs to level up. Suddenly, Jeongeum senses a different wyvern nearby. He can sense it is different than the others as he prepares to move once more. The scene then shifts to the rest of the group. They express concern about Jeongeum being alone. But then the group sees him return. They cheer, relieved to see him back. Jeongeum approaches the group and then mentions that everyone has worked hard and that he hopes they make it home safely, and also thanks Lee Jin-mak. Lee Jin-mak also hopes that Jeongeum reaches his family safely. Jeongeum then tells them if they run into trouble on the way to open the cargo hold, as he has prepared a small gift for them. He then states that they should hurry to see their families, and then begins to drive away. The scene shifts to Yongsu driving, as Jeongeum realizes that something is wrong. He wonders what the wyvern was, as it ran away quickly. He believes it was bigger and different than the others, and wonders if it was a leader or an adult. He then hears a strange sound and realizes they have no choice but to move forward, and that with the corpses, monsters, and overturned vehicles, it's the same no matter where they go. He then worries that he is making things even more difficult for Jeongeum, and then reflects on the dead soldiers. Yongsu is then shown that there is a barbed wire barricade in the road. Knowing it looks like the military put it up to block something, he realizes that they will have to take another route. He then states that he sees something at the end of a bridge, which turns out to be a horde of monsters. He realizes that this was what they were trying to block, and states that he will turn the vehicle around. Jeongeum tells him not to, and then asks if they can drive on the sidewalk to get past it. Yongsu says yes, and then sees more of the monsters in the distance, and he begins to panic. Jeongeum realizes that they must be there for a reason, and says that it is a good way to level up. He tells Yongsu that there is no need to turn back, and they need to keep going. Yongsu is in shock but agrees and begins to move forward. Jeongeum asks Yongsu if he has ever heard of the game where 3 races wage war against each other. Yongsu recognizes it, and Jeongeum states that he is reminded of a custom game mode where players use limited units and terrain to fend off hordes of monsters. He mentions that the current situation is quite similar. He then tells Yongsu to reverse the vehicle to a specific spot. As they do, Jeongeum spends 10 mana stones and unlocks auto ship. He then uses the remaining mana stones to increase the shipping speed to 100 kilometers per hour. He states, if you've already had your fill, come here. It's playtime. He summons a double-door refrigerator, launching it towards the oncoming horde of mutated dogs. The refrigerator, a massive white rectangle, is sent hurtling through the air with a whoosh, crashing into the pack of monsters. One of the beasts is sent flying, while others are crushed under the sheer weight of the appliance. He receives 12 mana stones from the kills. He expresses his delight as he states, "Oh, this is it." Jeonjim reflects on his enhanced shipping range and precision delivery, recognizing that while he could throw axes with speed, precision delivery doesn't exactly track the target to the end. It only slightly adjusts its direction. The mutated hounds are fast and incredibly quick, making axes ineffective even when flying at 100 kilometers per hour. Additionally, they don't stop even when their comrades are killed next to them. He concludes that a refrigerator is better because not only is it larger, but the weight can take them down with just a graze. He thinks that with his new auto ship, it will be even more convenient. He instructs PX to keep holding on. Yongsu is in disbelief as he sees a refrigerator being launched toward the horde. Confused as to how he can keep firing the same refrigerator, he wonders if the items that are being retrieved are coming back as new products. Jeonjim then asks Yongsu if he would like something to eat. He then realizes Yongsu's true question and asks if the stock is infinite, and if Yongsu didn't realize he was retrieving the axes from the ground. He then clarifies that he is just collecting them from the ground so they don't damage people's feet. Yongsu asks if it's true that the stock is infinite, and Jeonjim confirms, then asks what Yongsu would like to eat. Yongsu says that he wants a Coke Zero and a donut. Yongsu says that he is ashamed as he doesn't even know what Jeonjim's ability is, but he wanted to share his food. Jeonjim expresses his gratitude and says that he went on patrol and that there is everything in the logistics center. He adds that he thinks he will be able to get home soon. Yongsu confirms and says that they are an hour from his home and he hopes that everyone, including Jeonjim, stays safe. Jeonjim replies that he's worried, as he doesn't think he can show up to his family in his current state. He suggests getting some new clothes for the time being. Yongsu says he can help with that, but that he's not sure if he has what he's looking for. Jeonjim mentions that the issues with the wyverns have been mostly solved and that they should leave soon. Yongsu begins to drive, and Jeonjim asks him to slow down as he starts to feel sick. Yongsu says that it will only take 20 minutes. He continues to drive incredibly fast down the narrow road. Suddenly, Yongsu slams on the brakes and they come to a halt. Yongsu proclaims that they have arrived. The scene shifts, showing them in a new area. Yongsu, observing the dilapidated buildings, notices that the buildings themselves are old. He also notes that there are only remnants of the buildings, but no corpses. He states that it is different from the main street and decides that his family will be safe. He states that he just needs to open the door. Jeonjim reflects on Yongsu's frantic desire to see his family. He stepped on the accelerator so hard that he traveled an hour's distance in less than 20 minutes. Jeonjim recognizes that if Yongsu had to face a cold corpse, he would not be able to open the door. He then thinks to himself that he would rather have someone else open the door for him. He then wonders if he should just press the doorbell for him. He then says that he will. Jeonjim states that no one wants to confirm their family's death, even if there's only a 1% chance. He steps to the door to ring the doorbell. The door is then opened by Yongsu's family, who look shocked, but quickly show relief and cry. Yongsu asks his wife how she knew to open the door, and she mentions that she heard a noise and looked through the peephole. Yongsu then hugs his family and is relieved that they are safe. Yongsu's child says that she hates him, but then hugs him. Yongsu's wife then asks who Jeonjim is. Yongsu tells them that he is the person who helped him get there safely. Yongsu then calls out to Jeonjim to introduce them. Jeonjim starts to faint and reflects that he can't sleep there, as his last memory was hazy. He is shown being supported by Yongsu's family, who are trying to help him rest. Jeonjim starts dreaming of his interaction with his father at a funeral, saying that the emotion of parting does not just include sadness, but affection, gratitude, regret, longing, those kinds of emotions. He is then reminded that the best type of love is caring without expecting anything in return, and that he needs to be grateful. He reflects on that idea, and then recalls his memory of his sisters. He remembers how his sister would playfully hurt him, all while his dad is stating that the two look like they get along well, but states that they will one day realize how precious family is. He then shifts to seeing his sister in college as she got into nursing school. A notification pops up on screen, stating that she has been accepted. He then remembers his dad, who tells him that it is time. His memory shifts to the moment he leaves to start his military enlistment, as he is told to come back safe and not to get hurt. Suddenly, the image starts to distort and he begins to open his eyes. He feels pain and then suddenly he wakes up and asks where he is. Jeonjim, scared, wonders if he fainted, and that his last memory is hazy. He reaches for an axe from his subspace. Then he hears a voice. Yongsu is shown, asking if Jeonjim is awake. Yongsu's wife asks if he is okay, as he suddenly collapsed and fell asleep. She says that she didn't wake him because he looked like he was sleeping soundly. Jeonjim responds that it's okay and asks, as he hides his axe, how long he was asleep. Yongsu's wife states that he was asleep for about 3 hours and that her husband told her everything. She then thanks him profusely for helping her see her husband again. Jeonjim humbly states that he also received a lot of help from Mr. Yongsu. Yongsu's wife then insists that Jeonjim must be hungry and that he needs to eat before they talk. She mentions that her husband insisted on eating with him and hasn't eaten yet because of that. Jeonjim agrees. He is then shown the food, and he is surprised that it is conger eel stew. Yongsu's wife says that it is the best that she could manage with limited ingredients. Jeonjim responds that there is no more luxurious meal than this. He then thanks her and begins to eat. The flavors unfold on the tip of his tongue, combining the sweet and oily taste of the stir-fried kimchi and the clean, savory taste of the mackerel. He also states that it even feels cozy. He is left alone and says that he ate well. He reflects that he hasn't eaten that well since before the apocalypse, and even since leaving the military. He then mentions that it was comparable to his mother's kimchi stew. Yongsu then tells him that he will drive him to Gangnam. Jeonjim then states that Gangnam is not his final destination, as he needs to go to Ujeongbu and will need the car for longer. Yongsu then states that he understands and that he has a condition. He then states that they should talk outside. Yongsu states that they will go together in the truck to Gangnam and that he will take the bicycle to return. He says that the condition is that Jeonjim gives him the electric bicycle when he needs it. He says that even though the electric bicycle is not much, that he will help Jeonjim get to Gangnam as fast as he can. Jeonjim agrees, but is confused as to why he is taking such a risk. Yongsu states that with his skills, he could outrun the monsters. He then asks why Jeonjim is trying to help him. Yongsu then states that if it wasn't for Jeonjim, that he would not have made it this far, and that he might have died in the tunnel if it weren't for him. He says he is just trying to give help in return. He states that they are in the same difficult situation, and that if they help each other, that it would be good. He also adds that he might be presumptuous, but that he is not foolish enough to risk his life. Jeonjim states that he does understand, and then tells Yongsu that since he's shown him his ability, that he will show him as well. He states that his ability, subspace, is a space that nothing can enter without his permission, and that as long as it is maintained, he can even duplicate items from the storage facility. Yongsu confirms he understands. Jeonjim states that if Yongsu wants to help him, that he also has a condition, that Yongsu must stay with him until he is done in Ujeongbu. He also adds that when he levels up the subspace, that he can also bring them in with him. He states that he was able to level up after defeating the monster dogs, and that if Yongsu continues to help him, that he will also protect his family. Yongsu then states that he will bring his wife and daughter, and that they should leave right away. The scene then changes to Jeonjim in his subspace. He uses 100 mana stones to upgrade his subspace to level 2. He is given the additional ability to store items in front of him, with a storage capacity of 1 item, and the maintenance cost increases to 6. He acknowledges the new features and states that he will check on them later. Then, an external presence tries to enter, and he asks to allow entry for Yongsu, his wife, and his daughter. They are then shown being amazed by the size of the subspace. He tells them that if they need anything they can ask PX, and that everything is infinite. He tells Yongsu to take a break as he checks on his new abilities, then mentions they will leave in 30 minutes. Yongsu's wife then states that she will prepare some snacks. Jeongeum is then shown the new abilities that he has acquired. Subspace Lab and simultaneous shipping too. Jeongeum reflects on the original form of his subspace ability, which allowed him to store an object in front of him, access it at any time, and prevent anything from entering without his permission. He then recalls how his ability was enhanced after storing the logistics center, because an operating system compatible with the system's functionality was discovered and updated, merging Pack's AI and the Awakening System OS. This resulted in new functions like the shipment, where he hurls items at 100 kilometers per hour. He mentions that he didn't expect any additional abilities as he leveled up, but that's what happened. He received a notification stating that as his subspace leveled up, that he can store objects in front of him with a storage capacity of 1. He also acknowledges the new subspace lab ability, which allows for the combination, separation, and transformation of items. He wonders what that could mean, thinking about creating something by combining items. He notes that it requires a whopping 50 mana stones, and then decides to check the new abilities later. He then decides that all he can confirm is that he can store an object in front of him. He recalls storing the Pax FC in his subspace, thinking he was losing his mind. He then wonders what he would store and thinks of storing the Earth. He then is given a message that he has failed to store the Earth. He mentions that he figured that it wouldn't work and that it would be too overpowered if it did. Yongsu comes to him and says that he has checked the route to Gangnam and that they should take the main road. Jeongeum agrees. He then asks why Yongsu isn't playing with his daughter. Yongsu says that she fell asleep after playing for a bit, as it seems she felt safe in the subspace. Yongsu then thanks Jeongeum once more and says that he is really grateful, and that he knows that he has helped him as much as Yongsu has helped him. Yongsu then says that he will do whatever he can to help, and becomes serious, and Jeongeum wonders why he is suddenly being so serious. Yongsu then states that he will help, and that driving is the only thing he can help with, but in terms of speed he is faster than anyone. Jeongeum then jokingly asks him to drive slowly. Yongsu says he can't, as Jeongeum has helped him, and that they should speed up. The scene then shifts to them driving, and it is shown that they are moving at an incredible speed. Jeongeum notes that the area is more deserted than the main road, and that it seems like there aren't many monsters where there are no people. Yongsu then states that he has heard that this area is a Bronze Age archaeological site, and that it hasn't been developed. He adds that even though the road is a bit rough, there aren't any monsters or suspicious people. Then, he notes a military barricade with spike strips. Yongsu then wonders if the military is still present. However, Jeongeum states that they are not military personnel, just using the equipment. He states that they've probably been watching them from somewhere, and that it looks like they won't be able to avoid them. Jeongeum opens a small portal under the steering wheel and tells Yongsu to get inside. Yongsu asks if he will be okay, and Jeongeum states that he will be fine, and that if they intended to kill them, they would have shot already. He notes that there are 3 of them. The scene shifts to the people that have stopped them. One notes that the driver sucks. They then tell them to get out and open the cargo. They are surprised to see all of the food, and then ask where they got it. Jeongeum says that it is from a logistics center. One of the men says that it is time, and they should wrap it up and take him. One of them punches Jeongeum in the stomach, bringing him to his knees, as another pulls a cover over his head. Jeongeum is then shown being led into a dimly lit room. He is then told that he is with a group called the Joint Command Communications Headquarters. He is told that he was brought there quickly. They then reveal that he is standing by a soldier's corpse. He is told that the man with the hood was brought there for them to have a look at him, and then asked if he had the food that they were told that he has. They state that he said it came from a logistics center, and that he is the only one who can get in. They then ask him where he got them. Jeongeum confirms it is from the Gunpo Logistics Center. One of the men states that it is smart and that they should have gone there first. A monster sound is then heard. The man with the long coat confirms that they are facing a wyvern, then says that it is huge and no joke and that he almost died to it. He also mentions that his attacks felt blocked by something. He states that a soldier who attacked it with bullets had his head smashed into a wall and died. He then states that if his powers don't work on it, that bullets wouldn't have a chance. He states that they were recruiting people to fight the monsters, but that the military was weak. So he took over. He then clarifies that he hasn't killed them yet. He tells Jeongeum that he wanted to keep them alive because they seemed to know a lot, but he was starving, and that they would have probably died on their own. He then states that there are weapons and everything, but that they are out of food and that they will go to the logistics center with Jeongeum to get more. Telling him not to worry, as if they accept him as a member of the family, they can protect them. Jeongeum, disgusted, realizes that this is the perfect place to store and states to PX to store the Joint Command Communications headquarters in the subspace. The scene cuts to Jeongeum as he finishes storing the military base with a resounding thwomp. The leader, not understanding what had happened, exclaims, "What the? Where's the building?" Jeongeum then notes to himself that suddenly he just feels dizzy, similar to when he stored the PX. He also adds he needs to cut the line quickly. As the wyverns start to come near, they take to the air, seemingly attracted by the sounds. A series of creatures starts to converge on the location with razor-sharp teeth. A man from the military base cries out to run. He cries out that they are to shoot the smaller ones down first, then handle the bigger one. He wonders if just guns will work, but states that if he is able to use his ability, that he may be able to catch it. One of the surviving personnel cries out that they are traitors. After that, he realizes that he is in big trouble. The wyvern comes very close and has very defined scales and a menacing snarl. Jeongeum activates his ability and drags a soldier with him. The system asks him if he wants to grant the soldier access, and he confirms. He notes from the side that he is feeling dizzy from the transfer. He states the process is still ongoing. Jeongeum notes that he was able to sneak in during the chaos. He states that he now needs to account for storing things, as there could be dangerous aftereffects. The leader of the group is yelling and is charging forward with a melee weapon in hand. He's yelling about them being lizard bastards. He comes up to the creature and starts unleashing punches left and right, with what seems to be heavy blows. He is then seen exhausted and mentions he's leveled up and that he can take it now. Youngsu runs to Jeongeum asking if he is okay and also asks who is with him. Jeongeum informs him that it seems that the figure is from the military and that he was being tortured. As they lay him down on a bed, Youngsu states that there's no major bleeding. Youngsu then tells Jeongeum about the building seeming to have appeared suddenly. They wonder what it is and note that from the outside, it just looks huge. Youngsu says that it seems to be a military base. Jeongeum then states that he brought it in, but didn't expect it to be that big. He also remembers being blindfolded and not seeing the exterior and realizes he needs to check. He asks Youngsu to look after the person and that he will be right back. Jeongeum states to himself that the possibilities of a military base are endless and that there are guns, ammo, explosives, gas masks, and even military vehicles. He then states that it is the perfect place to survive in the apocalypse, but then adds that using it will be a hassle and different than the logistics center. He states that with the logistics center, PX could handle everything. Jeongeum mentions that the guns are in the armory and the ammo and explosives in the magazine, and that they need to fetch it themselves. He realizes that he had no idea how big the military base was while he was blindfolded, and that it is even bigger than PX. Even if they find it, Youngsu has no combat experience. Just then, PX drone startles him inside the military space. Pax informs him that Sector 2 was added to the program, and it can now be treated like the warehouse. Jeongeum expresses confusion, and PX continues. As an outcome, items from Sector 2 will be the same as Sector 1. Jeongeum thinks about this, then states, "Wait, are you saying?" Jeongeum, surprised, confirms with PX that this means the rifles and ammo can be duplicated and shipped out. Pax confirms, but notes the process is still ongoing. The progress is at 0.81%. Jeongeum asks for an estimate of the completion time. Pax states it's difficult to say, but offers to prioritize specific items. Jeongeum requests rifles, ammo, grenades, vehicles, and fuel. Pax confirms prioritization within 10 minutes and offers to restrict ordering permissions for those items, which Jeongeum approves of, expressing some distrust of the soldier. Jeongeum reflects on the situation outside, hoping for a resolution but acknowledging it's unlikely due to the sheer number of wyverns. He concludes the only option is to fight. He then equips himself with a rifle from the subspace, handing several large boxes of ammo to Yongsu. He explains that each box holds 10,000 rounds and to discard the gun if it jams. He asks Yongsu if he knows how to shoot. Yongsu confidently replies that seeing is faster than explaining. Yongsu opens fire on the wyverns, rapidly shooting down several. He comments on the difficulty of rapid fire, but notes they seem to have the situation under control for now. Jeongeum agrees, but notes that there was a large wyvern that is now missing. Jeongeum, inside the subspace, scans the area outside, knowing that he can't see any enemies and wonders if they are hiding. He decides to send out a remote-controlled toy car as bait. Yongsu expresses doubt about its effectiveness, but Jeongeum assures him he has a plan. The large wyvern suddenly appears, having been hidden. It swoops down and destroys the toy car. Jeongeum comments that it was indeed hiding. He tells Yongsu to shoot, and Yongsu opens fire with the rifle, hitting the wyvern multiple times. However, the monster seems largely unaffected and roars in defiance. Yongsu expresses surprise at its resilience, questioning how it can still be standing and if it's deflecting the bullets with its thick hide. Jeongeum agrees that something feels off, remembering a thug mentioning a similar situation. He suggests that their attacks are being blocked rather than deflected. Jeongeum decides to test his theory, proposing a competition to see whether the wyvern's defense is stronger or their attacks are more powerful. He emphasizes their limitless supply of weapons from the subspace. He then begins launching grenades at the wyvern, commenting on the physical strain of throwing so many. The wyvern, though hit by multiple explosions, still stands, albeit with some of its hide peeled off. Jeongeum is shocked at the creature's resilience, questioning what kind of monster it is. He questions if it has left. Yongsu confirms, but doubts it was because of their attacks. Jeongeum agrees, suggesting it retreated for another reason. He proposes they continue moving. Yongsu expresses concern about driving at night. Jeongeum shares Yongsu's apprehension, still shaken by the encounter. He reflects on how even grenades barely scratch the monster, leading him to question what weapons they could possibly use against something even stronger. He acknowledges the shrapnel from grenades is more dangerous than the explosion itself, and notes that using larger explosives could pose a risk to innocent people, as well as potentially make them appear monstrous. He ponders creating a weapon that's as powerful as a bomb, but without collateral damage. Jeongeum checks his mana stone count, surprised to find he has 314. He reflects on the large amount he acquired from the wyvern, but concludes that he's not short on stones. He then uses the stones to upgrade his abilities, increasing launch speed to 150 kilometers per hour, reducing launch preparation time to 1 second, increasing simultaneous launch capacity to 4 items, and increasing launch range to 50 meters. He acknowledges the increased cost of upgrades, but is pleased with the increased power of his ability. He then unlocks the Pocket Dimension Lab, admitting curiosity about its function. He informs Yongsu he wants to try it out, but needs to stop the car. Yongsu expresses concern about stopping and suggests to Jeongeum to try getting to his subspace as he continues to drive. Jeongeum agrees to try and is shocked that it worked. Yongsu then tells Jeongeum to just go ahead and not to worry about him, as if something happens he will just jump in as well. Jeongeum enters the Pocket Dimension Lab within his subspace, finding it initially unremarkable. Pax explains its functions. Combine allows combining 2 or more objects, and separate allows separating an object into its component materials. Jeonjim asks PX if he can register grenade with the pin removed and if it won't explode. Pax confirms and explains that the items exist in digital form within the subspace, preventing accidental detonation. He registers the prepared grenades, noting they are better than nothing, and then considers registering a rifle with an attached magazine. He thinks about attaching 2 magazines together, and then realizes he can create a powerful weapon without excessive collateral damage. Outside, Yongsu observes a barricade of stacked cars blocking the road, wondering what happened and how the cars ended up like a wall. He expresses concern about needing to turn back. Jeonjim rejoins him, saying that turning back won't be necessary, as he's created a new weapon. Jeonjim then summons his newly crafted weapon and launches it. The cars explode outwards. Yongsu, amazed, asks what Jeonjim created. It is shown to be a stack of 20 kilograms weights.